What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? How I would do the D-backs lineup in 2025 and the D-backs players who are not trying to be forgotten this spring training.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist, and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, please follow me on Twitter at CreativeThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. On today's show, we are discussing how I would do the D-backs lineup. You guys might disagree with me. I know Tori Lavelle is going to disagree with me, but this is how I would do the D-backs lineup. And then we are going to discuss the D-backs players who are not trying to be forgotten this spring training. So a whole bunch I want to talk to you guys about today. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. Now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss how I would do the D-backs lineup going to 2025. This is going to be my version. I know you guys might disagree. It might not even be the best construction of how to build a team in 2025 or how Tori Lavelle or any of the experts would do it, but based off what I've seen from the players and based off some stats, this is how I would do the D-backs lineup in 2025. Again, drop your comments in the YouTube section below for how you would do it. Tell me I'm an idiot, whatever you want to do. But this is how I would do the D-backs lineup. And we're going to start from the top, work our way to the bottom. And my number one leadoff hitter, of course, is going to be Corbin Carroll, who I think is the best player on this D-backs team to bat leadoff for Arizona. I think Jake McCarthy is in the conversation. I really love Jake the Rake. Ketel Marte, of course, can play anywhere. He's been fantastic as a leadoff hitter, but I'm still going with the classic, give me the speedster at the top. Corbin Carroll, when he's right, can basically be like the Mookie Betts version for the D-backs, where you have a guy with speed at the top, a guy that could steal 50 bags for you, but like Mookie has legit power. He can be the Mookie, the Jose Altuve, that 30-30 guy that can have power and speed for you as your leadoff hitter, be incredible. And we've seen Corbin Carroll even start off games with a inside the park or a little league home run, right? So this is a guy that can create chaos and havoc off the bat. And whenever you start a game with a Corbin Carroll double, doesn't it feel like Ketel Marte is going to come up right after him and then hit like a 2-run shot or do something to bring him home? So I think Corbin Carroll, with his batting profile, with the kind of style of player he is, I want him as my leadoff hitter for the D-backs. My number two hitter has to be the guy who finished as an MVP finalist last season in Ketel Marte. I really think one or two has to be Ketel Marte. Like, I was really not considering anyone else. Like Moreno, Jake McCarthy, I considered for like that number two spot. But at the end of the day, I want my 1-2 punch to be Carroll, Ketel Marte in that order. I think when you look across baseball, I think those first two hitters in your lineup are typically your two best now. You look at the Dodgers, you get Betts and Ohtani 1 and 2. You look at teams like the Phillies, they stack the top. Teams like the New York Yankees, they stack the top. Maybe not every team puts their two best players in the top of the order, but teams nowadays are putting their best players near the top of the order, get you up to a bat as quickly as possible because they want you to get as many at bats as possible, and just more likely to do that if your best players are near the top of the lineup. So for the D-backs, if we want any chance of repeating the most potent offense in the National League from 2024, probably starts with Corbin Carroll continuing to do what he did from the second half of 2024. If he can parlay that into a full season in 25, give me a repeat of what Ketel Marte did in 2024. Carroll, Marte are in the conversation for best 1-2 punch in Major League Baseball if you get the best version of both those guys in 2025. And then this is where the lineup gets a little bit non-conventional. I think 1 and 2 could have been predicted or projected by anyone who watches the D-backs. But number 3 is where I want to get a little bit more experimental. My number 3 hitter, I would go with Jake McCarthy. In the past, people have talked about putting your best hitter as your number 3 hitter. But I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift, or we potentially could see a shift in that mentality, because the stats show you the guy who comes up to bat number 3 for your team is probably going to have the worst opportunities. In the last couple of years, the number 3 hitter has seen more guys with nobody on, or has seen more opportunities with 2 outs and nobody on than I think any other spot in the lineup. And so for my number 3 hitter, I want someone that I can trust to not hit into a double play. I want someone that I can trust to get on base and keep the inning alive. If there is 2 outs, if there is nobody on base, still create something positive for my team. That's why I want Jake McCarthy as my number 3 hitter. Is he the D-backs best? Is he the third best hitter on this D-backs team? Maybe, maybe not. That might be arguable, but I think he's a better spot in the number 3 than other guys on this team, because let's say it's nobody on and there's 2 outs. Jake McCarthy, at least, he's the kind of guy where he's not trying to go up there and crush the ball. He's trying to keep the inning alive anyway. He's just trying to get on base. So he's the kind of guy that would be happy with a single despite there being nobody on base. And guess what? If there is somebody on base, if you do have Marte and Carroll on the base paths, McCarthy was a 350 hitter with over 900 OPS or runners in scoring position last year. So if you get the 2024 version of McCarthy, that was a guy that was clutch, definitely could come through with guys on the bases and Marte and Carroll. If there's nobody on the bases, it does not matter. McCarthy, with his speed, can always create havoc and create an opportunity to get on base. And then also, if Marte and Carroll are on the bases, McCarthy was one of the best players on the team last year in terms of not hitting into double plays. So I think at the end of the day, McCarthy is just a positive player, a winning player. And that's why I want as my number 3 hitter. Typically has been like Lourdes Gurriel in this spot, but he's a guy that does hit into a lot of double plays. And so I just think there are more positive outcomes that could come from Jake McCarthy batting number 3 as to other players on this D-backs team. So maybe you guys might disagree with that, but I would put McCarthy number 3. And that's where the lineup gets a little bit more non-conventional, because number 4, I think, is going to be the first baseman. That's what Torey Lovullo loves to do, right? He is pretty old school with making sure his cleanup hitter is his first baseman. So I expect Josh Naylor to be there. And having Jake McCarthy lefty, Josh Naylor lefty back-to-back, that could cause some issues for the D-backs, especially considering Carroll's a lefty as well. So do you want 3 of your first 4 hitters to be lefties? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, most pitchers in baseball are more right-handed. There are more right-handed pitchers in baseball than left-handed. Excuse me, more right-handed pitchers in baseball than left-handed. So it might be better for your lineup if the top does lean a little bit lefty heavy potentially. So we'll see. But McCarthy was a guy that did good against both lefties and righties last year. Marte crushes on both sides of the plate. So I wouldn't worry too much from there. So when I'm looking at that, when I'm at least looking at the top of the D-backs lineup, still give me the speedster, our most dynamic player in Corbin Carroll, number 1. Give me our best overall hitter in Ketel Marte, number 2. Give me a guy who I think is just a positive outcome player, productive in all situations, as my number 3 hitter in Jake McCarthy. And then, of course, my big power hitting first baseman as my cleanup hitter in Josh Naylor. Now we'll fill out the rest of the D-backs lineup in segment number 3. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offers one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. All right, back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's fill out the rest of our lineup. Again, Carroll number 1 is my leadoff. Marte number 2 is my number 2 hitter. Jake McCarthy number 3. Josh Naylor number 4. Again, McCarthy, Naylor, 2 lefties back to back. 3 of the first 4 hitters are going to be lefties. You guys might not like it, but let's go into my number 5 hitter. This is where I put Lourdes Gurriel, who was actually pretty effective as the number 5 hitter last season. Lourdes Gurriel pretty much only pretty much hits in the number 3 hole or the number 5 hole. And I do think he was effective last year. Still bad 279 as the number 5 hitter with a 754 OPS. I think of when I think of the kind of player Lourdes Gurriel is, the fact that he has pop, but not like over the top pop, right? Like he's a guy that can hit 18 to 25 home runs, but he's not hitting like 35 home runs. I think he has the kind of player profile that is perfect for a number 5 hitter. Can get around 20 home runs, can bat you 280, can produce, get you some RBIs. Like I think he's the prototypical number 5 guy. I don't trust him as my number 3 guy because he hits in too many double plays, has too many situations where he probably hurts the team, some big strikeout situations as well. Like Lourdes Gurriel, I do think he's pretty clutch, but I don't think he's the kind of clutch where I want him as my number 3 hitter. I think number 5, the fact that he also is not like unathletic, I think that helps too. Like he batted 303 last year with the runners in scoring position with a 781 OPS, which is like perfect as my number 5 guy. So Lourdes Gurriel is a guy that could get streaky and at times feels like he could carry the offense for 2 weeks, but also at times can go cold. I want him as my number 5 hitter. Number 6, I'm going to put Gabriel Moreno because when I'm looking at my lineup, I got Naylor, power guy. I got Gurriel, a mix of power and hitting tool. Then Moreno, it goes to just a straight, pure contact hitter now. I debated putting Moreno higher in the lineup. He's been a guy that you look at his numbers from last year when he batted number 2 for the D-backs, he was really good. And maybe there's still potential for him to maybe be that number 3 hitter for the D-backs because like I made the case for Jake McCarthy as a positive outcome guy. I view the same way as Gabriel Moreno. I think if I was to maybe look at this lineup differently, it would maybe switch Jake McCarthy and Gabriel Moreno in my fake lineup here. But I'm also okay with Moreno as the number 6 hitter. Being this pure, more contact guy, not a huge slugger. I like him as the number 6. You have Naylor as a power guy as your cleanup guy. Gurriel could do a little bit of everything. And then Moreno could just come in and just be like almost like a resetter in the middle of your lineup, like how we view Perdomo as the number 9 guy. Moreno could be a little bit of a resetter, coming after 2 guys that dip into a little bit more of the power department, 2 guys who are not exactly like, I guess Gurriel can straight up be a contact hitter at time, but like Gabriel Moreno is a pure hitter in baseball. So he kind of gives you like lead off, top of the order vibes, despite being your number 6 hitter. So I like really putting him there behind 2 sluggers because then after Gabriel Moreno, I have Eugenio Suarez, which I just love in my number 7 hole because he crushed in this spot last season. And then if you just went through Naylor, Gurriel, Moreno, all of a sudden you got 2 on with Gurriel and Moreno. Now the number 7 hitter is Eugenio Suarez, who had 30 home runs and 100 RBIs last year. Like, I just think as a number 7 hitter, that is just so scary. If you're a pitcher on the opposing mound, you just got through the top 6 of the order. You just faced an offensive catcher with a great hitting ability, with decent speed. You just went against Gurriel, who's got some pop as well. And now all of a sudden you have to go against Eugenio Suarez, who has a 49 home run season on his resume, a guy who's coming off a monster second half of the D-backs already. Like, I think if that guy's your number 7 hitter near the bottom of your lineup, like that's so scary for opposing pitcher because how do you attack the lineup in that way? You're going from power to a mix with Gurriel to back to pure hitting, back to power Eugenio. Like, I just like how you're getting like a different variation of style with how I broke down this lineup, because I think at times when you see the lineup breakdowns, the players can be redundant. Sometimes you look at your number 4, 5, 6 hitter, you're like, these are all power guys. These are all 3 true outcome guys who just want to hit home runs, strike out, and maybe get a couple walks. Like, there's too many lineups that you see in baseball where like 4, 5, and 6 all seem redundant. At least in this, Naylor's more power, Gurriel's a mix of both, and then Moreno's more pure hitting. And then you go back to Eugenio's your number 7 hitter with power. Then you go to your number 8 hitter, who's going to be your DH, with Randall Grichuk, who is really good overall last year, super great in the clutch, super great in late game situations, crushed left-handed pitching. Then you have Pavin Smith still, who you hope what he did in his small sample size last year can be replicated over the course of a full season. We don't expect him to replace the Jock Peterson production because that was so incredible last year. But if Pavin Smith can get you 90% of what he did in 2024 over the course of 80 game sample size, like, that would be huge for Arizona next year. So I want to keep my DH hitter as my number 8 guy in the lineup because I want everyone else to kind of know where they're going to be every single day. Like, I know the Dbacks like to rearrange their lineup depending on like the right-handed pitcher or the left-handed pitcher kind of situation. But for the most part, DH should really be the only position on this Dbacks team that switches in and out depending on who's on the mound. And so for everyone else, I just want to have a lineup that's like pretty locked in day to day. I really don't want to change anything. The only thing I want to change is the DH. I want the DH position also locked in. Unless Randall Grichuk goes on like another September tear where you have to move him up higher in the lineup, then that's okay. But for the most part, I'm fine with Grichuk being number 8. You put him behind Eugenio. Again, Eugenio power hitter, but then you go back to a contact guy, overall guy, like a Lourdes Gurriel type, and Randall Grichuk. And then, of course, your number 9 hitter is going to be, as always, Geraldo Perdomo, who is just the perfect type of like refresh in your lineup. Again, I always say there's no one on this D-backs team that I probably trust the plate discipline of more than a Perdomo, a 3 and like Perdomo, according to Baseball Reference, had a higher WAR last season than Corbin Carroll. Like, that's how much of a winning player Jerry is. One of the most underrated players in Major League Baseball. I have underrated him myself because I thought with the D-backs struggling last year, we were getting Jerry back. I was like, Jerry's not going to change that much life for Arizona. Our problems are bigger than Perdomo. And what did you know? As soon as Perdomo came back, the D-backs started to go on a run last season. And so when I'm looking at my lineup, give me our speedster Carroll as our leadoff hitter. Give me our best overall hitter in Marte as our number 2 guy. Give me the guy who probably is our most, can produce the most winning outcomes in Jake McCarthy as our number 3 guy. Give me our power hitting first baseman, Josh Naylor, as our number 4 guy. Give me a guy who's both a solid contact hitter and has some pop as our number 5 guy in Lourdes Gurriel. Give me a pure contact hitting catcher in Gabriel Moreno as our number 6 guy. Give me 30 home run, 100 RBI potential as my number 7 hitter in Eugenio. Give me a DH that I hope can just replicate what they did in the last season in Randall Grichuk and Pavin Smith, because if they both can replicate their 2024 season next year, that's a fantastic DH. And then finally, give me the guy whose plate discipline I probably trust more than anyone, despite being the number 9 hitter, in Geraldo Perdomo. And that's how I would do the D-backs lineup. If you disagree with me, drop a comment in the section below. Now we'll discuss the D-backs players who are not trying to be forgotten. This spring training, we'll discuss that in segment number 3. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. FanDuel is the app that is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. My favorite thing to do on FanDuel is the same game parlay. Whenever the Suns are playing, give me KD over on 25 points, give me Booker over on 25, and give me the Suns money line. When it hits, which is not very often, it brings a big smile to my face. If you want a big smile on your face, just visit fanduel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss the D-backs players who are not trying to be forgotten this spring training. These are the guys who have either struggled last season, maybe they were hurt, maybe they missed time, whatever the reason is, they are coming to camp and they're saying, we have to reestablish ourselves because we are not getting discussed. We are being overlooked right now. And so let's get into the list I have for the players who are not trying to be forgotten this spring training. The first guy, just got an article written about him on Arizona Sports, so he can't be that forgotten about if he's being written about. But Tommy Henry is first on my list because when you look at the D-backs pitching staff right now, there are just like no path for Tommy Henry to get any really like playing time on the major league level. And this was a guy, his sophomore season did have a pretty solid campaign in 2023. 4.15 ERA over 89 innings pitched. But you look at what he did last season prior to getting hurt, and he was terrible for the D-backs last year. 7.04 ERA in 7 starts, didn't improve anything from 2023, seemed to regress in a big way. And he's the kind of guy where you look at his pitching profile, you look at the kind of stuff he throws, and it's just like very underwhelming, right? If you're a young pitcher in the sport and you're topping out at 91 miles per hour, like, you better be nasty with like your off-speed stuff, like have a nasty sinker that you could just bury opposing hitters into the ground, or have some kind of curveball that has such a crazy 12-6 drop that people don't know what to do with it, or like a knuckleball, or just some sort of special go-to pitch you can have that's not your fastball. But the issue is Tommy Henry does not have that, and his fastball lost velocity going from 23 to 24. His velo in 23 averaged 90.7 miles per hour, not 97, 90.7. That was his fastball in 2023. In 24, it actually dipped below 90 on average. On average, Tommy Henry was throwing a fastball 89.8. And so if you're a young pitcher in the sport and the fastest you throw your fastball on average is below 90 miles per hour, there's just not going to be a lot of opposing hitters that you can fool unless you're just really, really elite with your secondary stuff. And so for Tommy Henry, the fact that his stuff is just like mediocre at best, like he's just not overwhelming. He's not dominant. He's trying to work on new pitches. He's been working on a cutter this offseason. He's trying to work on being more athletic on the mound. I love the fact that he's trying to improve his game. But when you look at this D-backs team, I got Burns, I got Gallen, I got Kelly, I got Fott, I got Ryan Nelson, I got Monty, I got Erod. I got 7 starters where you're locked in. And then even after that, I still like Gilbert Diaz more. I still like Christian Mena more. Even guys like Blake Walston, I probably like more too, even if we want to get a little bit deeper. You know what? I'm going to save a couple names because one of the names we're actually about to discuss. But how about like a Dre Jameson, who is coming off Tommy John, who I think is a perfect reliever. But if I had to pick one guy to, make a spot start for me, I still would probably pick Dre Jameson over Tommy Henry. And so Henry's doing his best to reestablish himself this spring training and not to be forgotten about. But unfortunately, I just see no path for him to make an impact with the D-backs team on the major league level with what his talent is currently at, and with the players we already have on the building. It just seems like uphill climbing for Tommy Henry. Up next, Kyle Nelson definitely has a better case because this was a guy who used to be very important to Arizona. This was a guy, when you look at his numbers in 2022, arguably the D-backs best reliever, a 2.19 ERA, 37 innings pitched. Then he disappointed in 23, was like fine, up and down season, 4.18 ERA, was dominant in terms of the strikeouts, double-digit strikeouts per 9. So through his first 2 seasons with Arizona, you at least felt good about Kyle Nelson. Then the last season was just kind of weird because he was great through his first 7 outings. His last 3, because his first 7 outings gave up no earned runs. Then his last 3, he gave up all the earned runs for the season, which were 5. So ballooned his ERA up to a 4.22. And then he got hurt, underwent thoracic outlet surgery, and he missed the rest of the season. And so for Kyle Nelson, started the season great, then struggled, and you have to wonder, did he struggle because of the injuries that ultimately led to his surgery? Because if that's true, what we saw from him last year pre-injury was a lot closer to the guy that we saw in 2022 and the best version that we saw from him in 2023. And Kyle Nelson still has a chance to be a very good, very effective reliever for the D-backs. Lefty specialist definitely is going to Joe Mansply right now, but if Kyle Nelson goes out there, proves that he's healthy, proves that he's still got the strikeout stuff and has a great camp, maybe he doesn't start the day on the opening day roster, but I think the D-backs would definitely keep him around in the minor leagues as a guy potentially in the future. If there's any injury, maybe the first one to be called up to the bullpen. I still think there is potential for Kyle Nelson to make an impact with Arizona going forward. So I would definitely watch him to see how he progresses through spring training, through camp, because he's still a guy that intrigues me. And then the final guy that I want to discuss in this segment is a little Bryce Jarvis. He was the guy that I was debating name dropping a second ago when talking about Tommy Henry, because Bryce Jarvis is a guy who I would want as a starter over Tommy Henry if it came down to that situation where 8 guys in this D-backs pitching staff got hurt and we needed someone to start. I would definitely take Jarvis over Tommy Henry, because Jarvis was someone that was actually heavily relied on last year. He got hurt that final day of July, or like the second to final day of July. And prior to getting hurt, he had 59 innings pitched. Like, Bryce Jarvis ended up finishing with as many innings pitched as Joe Mansply, who pitched the whole year. He had more innings pitched than Erod. Like, Jarvis was used heavily last year with the D-backs, and he was quite effective. A 3.19 ERA. Was he up and down at times? Yes, but in terms of like that long reliever type, when one of your starters starts to struggle, I thought Jarvis was perfect in that situation, and he is someone that I want to see get an opportunity again for the D-backs next season. I really liked what Jarvis did with Arizona last year prior to his injury, and I felt like he was improving as the season went on. Also a guy that was averaging around 96 miles per hour on that fastball last year, which was super effective. I just like Bryce Jarvis overall as a pitcher. I think he has real talent. I think he has a real future as a potential, at least a middle reliever for Arizona. So definitely don't want to overlook Bryce Jarvis this spring training, because he is also someone that still intrigues me for this D-backs roster in the near future. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Dose.